that. Welcome everybody to this webinar conversation, question and answer session about the Anchor Community Initiative Expression of Interest. My name is Ashley Barnescock, and I am the ACI Project Director at Away Home Washington. I go by they, them pronouns. And I've been with our organization for the past year or 2 years in this director role for the past year and a half. Was previously the coach directly working with communities, our first 4 anchor communities in this work. And prior to that, I was, doing a couple of different things, working with the City of Boston COC, working at Youth Care, running a diversion program in the Youth Worker Institute. Previous to that, working at the Mockingbird Society. And I've been in this world for about the past decade in a bunch of different roles, focusing on youth and young adult homelessness. And I'm just so excited to get to talk to you all today about the Anchor Community Initiative. I'm so proud of the work that we've been able to do at Away Home Washington. And so we're going to just jump right in here. I want to start out by saying Black Lives Matter. And we're all here partially because we know it and we want to create a world where the rest of the world knows that too. And it's something that we really feel strongly about as Away Home Washington. So we want to start off this conversation that we have today making sure that that's front and center. And along with that, Monday was Indigenous Peoples Day. And every day, not just on Indigenous Peoples Day, but every day we need to recognize that we also sit on colonized lands that were taken and continue to be taken by force and genocide. We're all part of systems that continue to dispossess and colonize First Nations peoples. And I want to recognize the land itself and the incredible resilience and tenacity of those past and present whose land this rightfully is. It's our work to reflect on our history so that we can continue to act on our present. And so folks have been jumping into the chat with where you're calling in from. And I would love for folks to also be able to say whose land you're on from where you're sitting in this state right now. Away Home Washington is a mission-driven, goal-oriented organization, and everything we do is really geared towards this. We want to see a Washington state where every young person can access the services they need and want quickly without having to leave their home community, and see them stably housed as a result of that work. And we call that yes to yes. Anytime a young person says, yes, I need support, yes, I want to come inside, they're not waiting on a wait list for months and months and months. They can get what they need in their home community quickly and easily, and it results in them being stably housed. And so that's really what we're all here to do. And we want to make sure that's front and center of this time as well. And our flagship program, the Anchor Community Initiative, currently supports 4 communities: Yakima, Walla Walla, Spokane, and Pierce counties. And we provide targeted coaching and data support to transform systems, to partner with them to transform their own systems to make measurable reductions in youth homelessness all the way to 0. And they have started blazing this trail to prove that this is possible in our state, even during a pandemic. And the question now is, who is going to be a part of cohort 2? Who is going to join them? And we want to kick off this time by just having you hear a little bit from some folks that have been involved in ACI, some of our staff and community members, and just hear what they have to say. And then we're going to dive in further into actually more about our public-private partnership, more about the expression of interest, and more about what the ACI looks like kind of on the ground. So I hope you all can hear this. Let me know if you can't. Is it working?
I can't hear it.
What should I do, Julie and Deontay? I don't know how to make myself hear it.
Hey, Ashley, if you, in the share your screen option, there's a little there should be an option to share your sound as well. At the top, there's probably a view options kind of thing.
When we talk about youth and young adults experiencing homelessness, who we're really talking about
Away Home Washington is a mission-driven organization dedicated to getting to a yes to yes Washington. We want to see a Washington state where every young person, regardless of who they are, where they come from, has what they deserve, which is a safe and stable place to live.
When we talk about youth and young adults experiencing homelessness, who we're really talking about are young folks between the ages of 12 to 24. And these are young folks that are experiencing their housing instability separate from their family.
And it's important to note that young people of color and LGBTQ and trans and gender nonconforming young people in particular experience homelessness at rates far above their cisgender, heterosexual, and white peers. We really believe that you cannot end youth homelessness without also ending disproportionality. At Away Home Washington, we support communities around Washington State to end, not just manage, youth and young adult homelessness.
The Anchor Community Initiative is really one piece of the sort of larger field of work that Away Home Washington is doing in order to create what we call a yes to yes state. A yes to yes state is essentially a state that has youth homelessness systems that is able to say yes to young people when young people go to them and say, yes, I need housing.
For the anchor communities working with Away Home Washington, we get incredible technical assistance, coaching, and expertise around how to do this work in our communities and how to really leverage existing relationships, build data infrastructure, and learn how to follow the lead of youth and young adults.
Our model requires communities to bring in young people impacted by the system to be a part of their core teams as a full member so that their voices are regularly included into the decision-making processes that happen at those tables.
Nothing about us without us is what our young people say quite a bit. There's no way that we can end youth and young adult homelessness without youth and young adults who have experienced homelessness leading the way. Data is a big piece of what we do. That data really allows our community to look in aggregate at our progress towards functional zero. And it lets us know where our opportunities are to either decrease the number of young people experiencing homelessness and then to track in live time if our efforts are resulting in that decrease.
In each of the communities, they build this thing called a by name list, which is essentially a list of people's names of every young person that's experiencing homelessness in their community.
Very few communities across the country can say with certainty for any population, like, we know how many people are experiencing homelessness.
Spokane has officially produced a sustained, measurable reduction in youth and young adult homelessness. So I hope prospective communities looking at Spokane see that it's possible.
The whole community is better off when everybody, including young people, have a safe, stable place to live and know that they belong in their community.
I'm here to end youth homelessness. I'm not here to manage it anymore, because young people should not ever have to be sleeping on the streets, sleeping in a shelter. Every single young person deserves a safe place to be able to just be a young person and grow up.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. And so we're going to dive into all of this stuff a little bit more as we continue going. And we have 4 key speakers today, but we have a number of staff members who are also here who are hopefully going to jump into the Q&A session and be able to answer lots of your questions that you might have as we continue to kind of move forward with this process. And I'm going to have folks introduce themselves as they come up to speak. And we're just going to keep moving right along. Today, we are really going to focus a little bit of time and energy hearing from our Executive Director, Julie Patino, and Executive Director, Kim Justice of the Office of Homeless Youth, about Away Home Washington's public-private partnership and how we work together to realize this vision across the state and what this all means for the Anchor Community Initiative. We're going to talk about what this looks like actually on the ground. What are we signing up for? What is this all about? Talk about specifically the expression of interest and go into some key parts of that so everybody kind of understands what the components are and what they all mean. Hopefully have a lot of time for questions and have some closing comments at the end. So with that, I want to focus our attention onto Julie and Kim to give us a little bit of their insights into this opportunity and our partnership with the Office of Homeless Youth and Away Home Washington in this work.
Thanks, Ashley. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really, really excited about this opportunity to expand the anchor communities for the first time. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this. We are at this moment as a result of a lot of efforts and in the legislature, a lot of support that has come to us statewide. Not only from sort of the legislative backing and the resources that we were able to advocate for at that level, but also from a lot of funder and philanthropic support. Away Home Washington was an organization, or is an organization, that was funded by a lot of will on behalf of a lot of the key funders in Washington State who really wanted to see a new day around addressing homelessness for young people. So we're helping walk the talk for all who are in support of that mission. I will say that the Anchor Community Initiative is a part of a larger vision that Away Home Washington has to what you've been hearing as a yes to yes state. You'll be hearing more about some of those developments over the next year. But the flagship program of the Anchor Community Initiative is something that has been incredibly powerful in the 4 communities where we have done our work. We lean into the fact that those communities have taught us so many things that we think the new communities are going to profoundly benefit from. At the same time, we want to recognize that any new community is its unique place and location, and that all of our work is really calibrated to meet communities where they're at and to live into the authenticity of what makes sense for those communities to endeavor to end homelessness for young people in their community. Again, sort of referring to this public-private partnership, I think about it as sort of the 2 pillars that really support this work. Kim will talk to you more about the Office of Homeless Youth's role in supporting the anchor communities. It isn't just through dollars. There are other functions that OHY provides as we endeavor in the same direction. But I also just want to underscore that Away Home Washington, we also sort of bring some resources to the table. In addition to our technical assistance and support in that manner, we also have really stalwart funder support that allows us to kind of parlay those resources into communities to further support them in this work. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Kim Justice, who has just about the coolest name ever, who is the Executive Director for the Office of Homeless Youth Services, to talk more about the public part of our partnership. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie, and hi, everyone. The thing about a name with Justice in your last name is just that it's a lot to live up to. So great to see everyone. Thank you all for being here and just your interest in this work. This is incredible work, and we're really excited at the Office of Homeless Youth to be a partner in the Anchor Community Initiative, and so grateful for the opportunity to get to expand it. I think this is a really just sort of remarkable endorsement about, of this model and the value that it holds in our state. And just I want to go back to the roots, the idea of an Office of Homeless Youth and an Away Home Washington. Those, were ideas conceived by visionary leaders, including young people as visionary leaders, who really recognized that solving youth homelessness requires champions and dedicated focus within state government, as well as in community. So, community is where young people live. It's where they find safety, support, stability, relationships. Community is where solutions arise, and community also needs resources and investment. And that's part of what the state's role is. That's a significant role of the state, right? Is the state is investing its resources in anchor communities. At the Office of Homeless Youth, we have kind of this role to guide the state's funding, policy, and practice solutions. And so obviously the funding for like what, services, support, housing, et cetera, what is needed to address and solve youth homelessness, and the investments and dollars that the state makes toward that is so critical as a component and as a partner in this public-private partnership, as well as driving toward policy and practice solutions. So there's a lot of, as a funder, there's a role that we play and a responsibility and accountability that we uphold. So, what that looks like and what you can expect is, support for through the office, through technical assistance, program managers dedicated to each of our grantees across the state to provide support, providing training, general data support. And in the case of Anchor Community Initiative, there's some specialized data support that's really necessary for this initiative as well. But aside from that, I was thinking about like, what is it about the anchor communities that's really unique? And so I wanted to share kind of 3 things that I think make anchor communities unique, and the special role that they play in the state landscape and shaping the work of the state and the Office of Homeless Youth. So, first, I think it's community effort. This is not an initiative that's about individual service providers or what any single entity can do. It's about what is possible when a whole community comes together to solve an issue. And that takes all the service providers in a community, the schools, public systems, local government, lived experts, just everyone's involvement. Second, I would say solution-oriented. Anchor communities are really in a unique position of being in the front seat, driving towards solutions. So again, it's not just about service provision, it's about services in the aim of achieving solutions to end youth homelessness, and particularly focusing that goal on ending youth homelessness among LGBTQ+ and BIPOC youth and young adults. So anchor communities have this sort of exceptional ability to, when you're driving toward a solution, you have like more of a view of like what's getting in the way of that, in terms of, if the services are not the right services, or there's policy barriers or system barriers. And so those are the things that really are, poised to inform the work of the Office of Homeless Youth and the statewide landscape of funding and policy. And then third, and kind of relatedly, is that this is building a model for the state. So anchor communities are really building toward this like proof point, like what does it take to truly end youth and young adult homelessness? What are like the core, I always think of it as like core ingredients. What are the core ingredients you need? And that can be scaled and replicated in communities across the state. And that doesn't mean that this is a cookie cutter approach and everyone has to do everything exactly the same way. It's like, again, what are those core elements, but also like allowing for communities to maintain their own identity and their own unique approaches, but being able to build this model that really can be a statewide model. So I think, that those are kind of the like some of those 3 kind of unique core things I think of when I think of the anchor communities and how they shape the work of the state. So as Julie said, a lot has been learned from the 4 communities who formed the initial cohort. And I think it's been a really great opportunity to incorporate those learnings from those communities into the next iteration of this effort. And I'm excited for the rest of the presentation to hear more about it. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kim and Julie. That all hits the nail on the head. And I'm really excited for you all to hear from Isaac more about just like what this actually looks like on the ground, because it feels like very high level. And Isaac's going to talk you through kind of what it looks like in the day-to-day.
Hey y'all, my name is Isaac Sanders and I am the interim ACI project director and the lead coach in the current communities. And like Ashley was saying, I want to kind of set some things that were said before and give a little bit more context around the ACI and how we work with communities on the ground. Like the video said, the Anchor Community Initiative is a project of Away Home Washington that supports communities to accurately know all of the unaccompanied youth and young adults aged 12 to 24 experiencing homelessness and use that data to end youth and young adult homelessness. This includes ensuring just and equitable outcomes for youth of color and LGBTQ young people. We provide strategic coaching, data infrastructure, subject matter expertise, and state-level advocacy to local teams who leverage their expertise, political will, and real-time data to transform themselves into communities that can quickly provide every unique young person a pathway towards stability. Anchor communities establish cross-sector improvement teams working in sync with young youth action boards to make progress towards time-stamped measurable goals. These groups analyze their system and take action to change change the outcomes their system is producing for young people. Particularly, focus is paid to reducing and ending disproportionality for youth of color and LGBTQ young people in all aspects of their system. So how does this happen? We start with supporting communities to build the relationships and infrastructure to know all of the young people experiencing homelessness in real time while creating a baseline level of youth engagement in the work. Then we start coaching communities to use their data to set specific short-term goals to drive reductions in homelessness, including around reducing disproportionality. That is where we are now in our process with these 4 communities. After that, we make the final push to reaching functional zero and sustaining that gain. In the most straightforward sense, ending homelessness for us means our communities can house all the young people coming into their system within 30 days and have 0 unsheltered. In late 2019, we adopted an additional set of measures around ending disproportionality for youth of color and LGBTQ plus youth, because we don't believe our work is done until our systems serve all young people coming through their doors. This has changed a lot of the way we do our work. Communities, after reaching quality data, as mentioned before, can look at their data points monthly to see impact in real time. Reflection and analysis of data is integral to the improvement team's success, which connects the qualitative experience with the quantitative, painting a full picture of what changes need to happen to reduce youth homelessness in the community. Data also is integral to setting time-stamped measurable goals to strive toward in each 6-month reducing goal cycle. Reaching these reductions involve answering questions like, how many young people need to be housed on a monthly basis for this goal to be reached? Or do all of the young people in our system know what resources are available? How can we make that true? Or have we had a diversion conversation with all of the young people currently accessing shelter? Can we do that in the next 2 weeks? The cycle kind of looks like this. We support communities to set a goal, identify the opportunities for improvement, start pinpointing changes, testing them, reflecting on what we learned, and continue coming up with changes and tests through rapid PDSA cycles that we support teams to flesh out and make actionable. All of this happens with young people both at the core team meetings and with the support of youth action boards that are also coming up with changes. Since December, Spokane tested and reflected and retested different strategies that reduce the total number of young people actively experiencing homelessness on an average basis. This is really exciting because they are the 3rd community in the US to see this measurable reduction. I've had the privilege to work with them through this process and the other communities also through this process, and this improvement did not come easy. They put in a lot of hard work, collaboration, and culture shifting with truth telling at the center of it all, which is really, really important and something that I think is really important to have in these new anchor communities moving forward. Yes, and so this is kind of the model that it makes up the Anchor Community Initiative whenever we're talking about the support that we give, along with the ways that the community is coming together. At the center of of all of it is the core improvement teams, which is informed by the youth action boards and the community teams, which are larger bodies that give more information to the core improvement team so they can work with, once again, talking about the qualitative versus quantitative data. The core improvement teams is looking at all of those. And then the leads in those spaces are the ACI lead, ACI coordinator, and youth and community engagement coordinator. Those three positions will kind of coordinate and bring all of these other entities to the table, along with a data lead who will be the point person to make data make sense, which is really, really important and something that we've learned in the other communities. A lot of the times is like, not everybody wants to look at data and deep dive in it, but when you have somebody who does, who can explain it really well, it makes it a lot easier to understand what we need to do working to get forward. So the support that is coming from Away Home Washington specifically is the lead coach, along with youth engagement technical assistance and data and evaluation technical assistance. There's a lot of coaches that put a lot of time into working with the communities, and we show up when we need to show up and when we're asked and when we're not asked, because we really want to push communities to get to where they want to go. And in my experience, I was a collegiate athlete, and the way that I think about it is my coach was my best friend and also my worst enemy sometimes. And my best, and sometimes when I think of best friends, they're people who will hold up mirrors at me and reflect back to me what I really want to actually do when I'm saying things out loud. And so for folks who are from the current communities who might want to chime in the chat, they know that I am not always the best, but we do get to some results, which is the goal at the end of the day. Along with that, we have other bigger entities and bigger things that bring the community together, like the Centralized Diversion Fund and Student Stability Innovation Grants, which are programs and that we from Away Home Washington have implemented in the current ACIs that are impacting their work and influencing their improvements, which is really, really powerful and important. And there's a lot of examples there that we can ask questions about later. And then there's also communities of practices, because I don't believe that all of this information that is happening in each community needs to stay in each community. And I don't believe anybody else on our team believes that either. And so a lot of the communities are constantly in communication with each other. The coordinators are all talking to each other, the youth and young adult engagement people are talking to each other, and people are sharing ideas and sharing tests that they try, and coming together to inform each other. Maybe this worked in our community, but maybe it might work in yours. The list goes on and on. I'm getting really excited because this is my favorite part of the work. So if I'm rambling a lot, but I can answer questions later. But that's that. But something that I think that we have learned most about what is needed in a community and makes you right for the Anchor Community Initiative is we believe that ending youth and young, y'all believe that ending youth and young adult homelessness is possible. That is integral to this work. If that belief is not there, then it's really hard to do this work. It also is possible that if you want to be an Anchor Community Initiative, you need to believe that we cannot end youth homelessness without equitable outcomes for youth of color, LGBTQ, and trans and gender nonconforming young people. Something that was said in the video that I think is really important is nothing about us without us. And one of those, I get jumbled sometimes, but I think the way that expands out to at the end is nothing about us without us is for us. And a lot of these systems that have been created were created in racist and homophobic and transphobic ways. And if we're not having having conversations along the way about that, then we're not actually creating a system that's equitable for everyone. Also, something that the Anchor Community Initiative, if you want to become an Anchor Community Initiative, you need to believe is that our homelessness response system can be so much better. The thing that I have been told by my mother many, many a times is that she's critical of me because she loves me, and she loves me because she wants me to be better. And that's how I think about the systems that are currently operating across the world, is that I know that they can be better. And the reason why I am critical of them is because I love them. And that's how I think that everybody should approach this work. Another thing is that you should believe that we need expertise from young people and collaboration across systems to make it happen. Once again, nothing about us without us. Again, very, very important and integral to this work. Again, and finally, that you must commit to holding yourselves accountable to young people in your community first. And I think that is loud enough on its own without me explaining.
Thank you so much, Isaac. And I think, right, we've talked a little bit more in depth about what it means to be an anchor community. And I'm so interested to hear y'all's questions about what you want to dive into further about those different things. And before we get there, we are going to talk a little bit more about this expression of interest process, what the timeline looks like, some of those key pieces. And so in this EOI information packet that I'm hoping somebody can drop in the chat for you all, we released it yesterday, so I'm sure many of you have it and have already looked through it, being the very diligent, incredible homeless service providers that you are. But that can be found with also links to a wealth of other resources that we provide anchor communities to make progress towards ending youth homelessness. And so there's the EOI packet, there's a bunch of links in there, and there's also, they all link back to our ACI resource hub, where we have a lot of different things in there that are both useful for, I think, checking out more about this EOI process, but at the same time, also kind of playing around on that website will help you see what some of the key kind of strategies, resources, like give you more of a taste for some of the kinds of things that we can provide. And they are free for anybody to ever use. So you can use them now. You don't have to wait to become an anchor community to use them. And so I'm going to walk through a little bit more of this kind of step by step. So section 1 of the expression of interest is filled with background information that might help you understand a little bit more about what you and your community are getting yourselves into with applying to be an anchor community, because this partnership really is a marathon. I was one of the leads, me and Aja, who also works at Away Home Washington now. And Matt is here, was the lead for Spokane for the 100-day challenge. But me and Aja were the leads for King County. And I will tell you, like, that was a hard sprint to do the 100-day challenge. And the Anchor Community Initiative, I think, is like a little bit different of a pace, but it is an intense kind of like long-term marathon that we have to kind of keep going through, keep like, you know, a lot of folks in the Anchor Community Initiative will be like, I feel like I'm failing all the time. And we believe that like we need to see some failures to be able to see successes, and to really know that we're pushing ourselves really hard. And so to be able to kind of see this as a marathon, I think is an important thing. So it's important to know kind of like, what does this look like on the ground? What are the expectations? What are the specific measures of functional zero? Those kinds of things are all in this background information, and things that you can find on the ACI Resource Hub. Section 2 focuses on who your community is and how different folks contributed to the EOI responses. It's more important for us to hear from you about just like who you are and what the process was that you went through, than like making sure that every single component of like the narrative responses are like, you know, 100% like perfect, like written in an exact kind of like academic way or anything like that. Like, we want to know who you are, is kind of the key point I want to get across with this. And with these current anchor communities over the past couple of years, we've learned together really just how critically important it is that the whole community is excited about embarking on this adventure together. And so we want to see how you're bringing together providers, young people, political leadership, other stakeholders to work together on this application, as one way of kind of just seeing how your community is able to work together. Similar to what Kim was bringing up earlier, just about the way that anchor communities work. And then we get into kind of the narrative section. So criteria A is asking you to tell us about your community. So this section is really asking you to share some of the most important information that you want to share about your community, the work that you've done so far, and where you see opportunities in your system. Like, what kinds of things are happening now? What are you seeing? What kind of work have you done? What are you most proud of? Those kinds of things is what we want to see in this section. And then in criteria B, that's focusing on your community's vision. So why are you excited about this opportunity? What things would you change about your system if you could? And do you believe that your community can end youth homelessness, including ending disproportionality for youth of color, LGBTQ, and trans and gender nonconforming young people. One of the common things that we say that we haven't said yet, I thought we would a couple of times, that we haven't said yet is this system is designed to get exactly the results that it gets. The ACI is always about continuous improvement and serious interrogation of what is and isn't working in our system. Because if our systems were perfectly designed, none of us would be sitting here today. We would have ended youth homelessness. That's what we're all here to do. That's the big goal. And so if we're doing anything other than that, then we have room to improve. And that's kind of the philosophy that we have and that we bring in to communities to try to like get really creative and inspired and curious about what is happening in our system, and taking a really clear and honest look at it. So the questions become like, you know, if we could actually house every young person in 30 days, what would our system have to look like? If our system did not produce anyone who was unsheltered, or responded to unsheltered homelessness so quickly that we could say we reached this goal of 0 unsheltered young people, that's actually kind of daunting and scary. And so we want to see in this section that your community is really excited to kind of go there together, and that you see the community that you want to have, that you want to be a part of, that you want to help build together in partnership with us. And then in criteria C, this is about community capacity for launch and implementation. So like I said, community buy-in to this work is really critically important for success. And this part is just asking some more tangible questions about who locally is going to step up to support some of the leadership positions that are part of the ACI work, your thoughts about how you're going to set yourselves up for success in launching in the beginning of next year, and how you envision creating and leveraging some of the political leverage and relationships that you have to be able to really kind of like path break in this work, along with our support. So the expression of interest should be completed via the online jot form link. And so all of the things in the packet are there for you to be able to reference, and eventually they should all go into that and be virtually submitted to us. And along with that, we ask that you submit a couple of additional materials. So we require all the questions to be completed at a minimum, along with a signed statement of support, signed by as many people as you want, but at a minimum, the agencies hosting local positions, the COC lead representative, HMIS data representative, and YAB members or young people that supported the application, if that's applicable to your community. And then a signed letter of support from political leadership, which is broadly defined. It could be your mayor, your city councilor's office, or your city council members, could be from your local representatives or some other local champion that is really important in your community. So that can be really broadly defined for you. And then you're also encouraged and welcome to submit anything else that you want that tells us more about whatever it is that you want us to know about your community. You're very encouraged to be creative. You can do things like a video, you can do like art projects, you could do like almost anything that you can think of that is telling the story that you want to tell about who you are, to us, and giving us any information that we didn't ask about that you think is really important for us to know about who you are. And so we want to see at the end of the day in a really high quality expression of interest application. These are the things that we want to see. We want to see that you're excited. We want to see that you believe that it's possible to end youth homelessness, including ending disproportionality. Your honest thoughts about what you think it will take to get there, the community level buy-in that you have to try to make it happen, or that you can create together to make it happen, and your commitment to be responsible to and accountable to young people and to each other in this journey. And I think it's really like part of this kind of nonprofit systems that we are often in, where we are like feel accountable to funders, we feel accountable to like the public systems and things like that first, before the young people who are sitting there right in front of us. And this initiative is asking us to like flip the script and remember that like it is the young people in our community that we need to be responsible for and responsible to, and accountable to. And really, I think in the long run, I'm curious what other anchor community folks who have been part of this in the past would say, but really accountable to each other as a team that is doing really hard work together, are all just like really critical and important things. So we have some key selection criteria, clarity and completeness of the proposal, current community capacity to support this work, geographic diversity is something we take into account. We want to see community collaboration and cross-sector support, commitment to and ability to create a quality by name list, engagement with young people with lived expertise, and commitment to and vision for ending youth homelessness, including disproportionality. And so as long as communities complete all of the sections and submit all the required materials, we will consider that a completed application. And the deadline for that is 5 p.m. on November 19th, 2021. And just really quickly, all this information is in your EOI packets. And the thing that I want to highlight here a little bit is the community interviews. And so during this week of December, if communities are selected to be able to move forward to this interview process, there will be a selection panel in an interview that we would ask some community members to be a part of, and to be able to participate in as part of this, part of information gathering to gear up towards hopefully making a decision in late December so that we can all get started right away in January 2022. And there's a bunch of things that we asked anchor communities, current anchor communities, what they would say to you all about what it takes to do this. And I think I really like the top one. The ACI supported our communities to develop a language and a way to be and work together where we could go forward instead of pulling in all our own distinct directions. Shared and aligned goals, collaboration as a core value, informed by our own data in a community of practice with young people as experts. And without the ACI, our community would not have case conferencing, a youth by name list, a centralized diversion fund, a paid youth and young adult leadership position. These are the most important tools we've used to reduce youth and young adult homelessness in Spokane. Somebody's from Spokane, and have helped us better to understand the system gaps and opportunities. This empowers our community to allocate resources where they are most needed, to advocate where we are not resourced, and to be innovative and nimble around youth and young adult recommended system strategies. And I want to make sure that there's time for questions, but I also wanted you to hear from some of these amazing anchor community folks that have been paving this way this whole time for the past couple of years through a pandemic to get us to where we are today. And so with that, I am going to stop sharing my screen so we can kind of see each other. And if people want to come off mute and ask your questions and or drop some questions in the chat. I see that there's a lot of things that I haven't looked at yet. But if folks would like to ask any questions either in the chat or unmute yourself, we would love to hear your voices. Oh, Gail, I can't hear you. Hold on.
Go. Okay, sorry, it gets me every time, but only after I practiced and I'm on a Zoom. Sorry, guys. I'm with Community Youth Services, Gail Hemman. I go by she, hers, and we're on the coastal Salish and Squaxin land, among others within our service region. And we work with unhoused youth and families ages 12 to 24 in Thurston County and throughout Southwest Washington. And we work with a positive youth development model that's youth driven. But what I'm most excited about, most grateful for today is I was just thinking today about how we have a waiting list for young adult housing, despite a really successful program, strong outcomes, and doing all of the services that help youth go from shelter to stable housing, coming from case management background. But the fact that we have that waiting list and it's persistent and it's funding, and so even though we have core funding, the fact that we have a waiting list and that there's always youth in the community, especially in COVID, as shelter capacity has gone down, and there's that youth are ready to make a change. They come to initial shelter at our Rosie's Place or one of our teen shelters, and then they, there's just, because of the systems and overlapping systems, right, like disproportionate youth populations are kind of stuck in waiting lists trying to get into the housing. And even though both programs are consistent and strong, it's just that fact it hurts that it hasn't gone away yet, and the disparate impact of it. So thank you guys for bringing this up today and your excitement about it. For the folks who can't be here today, I appreciate it.
Totally. Thank you so much, Gail. Megan, I see your hand up too.
Hi, Megan Sullivan, she, her pronouns, together, Coast Salish South Sound, part of that land, same area as Gail. Question that we have is, can you all speak to a little bit more about school partnerships? And it's a two-parter. Specifically, is that required? And then how the 4 anchor communities have done that, if there are folks that can speak to that. Thanks.
Yeah, 100%. So with the first 4 anchor communities, we had asked that folks find ways to be able to make connections and collaborations with their school partners, at least school partners, in their different communities. One of the kind of key pieces of the By Name List scorecard is system relationships. And so we can't know every young person who's experiencing homelessness if we don't have clear referral relationships at a very bare minimum, clear referral relationships with our biggest school partners. I think Spokane had one of the most robust kind of processes for trying to figure out really strategically using OSPI data, which school districts really needed to be involved. They really needed to prioritize partnerships around to be able to say yes to those questions on the scorecard. And as you're going through, if you become an anchor community, one of the first things is you go through the By Name List creation process, which has a bunch of components about do we have the relationships that we feel like people are not falling through the cracks between all of these different systems of care. And so every community should have a school representative on their core teams. And this has been, I think, an ongoing area of improvement for communities to continue to feel or to investigate how can we really build these relationships in a way that is sustainable. I think there's been a couple of strategic uses of OHY services dollars that have really helped communities be able to do this. One of them is a couple of organizations have set up outreach systems using the OHY services dollars to be able to have people who are dedicated to actually doing outreach and building those relationships over time with schools, knowing all the McKinney-Vento liaisons in the school districts, and making sure that those referrals have an actual connection, and that there's somebody dedicated to that. And so there's a lot of ways in which we coach to support communities to be able to learn from what other communities have tried that has been successful, to test changes around improving relationships with schools. And every community does have some kind of education representation on their core team, because it's really hard to be able to know enough about those other systems to be able to build those really effective referral relationships if you don't have that expertise from those kind of people on the core teams.
Thank you.
Yeah, are there other questions that folks are having as we think about this EOI process or the next steps?
I have a question, and I don't know where my hand is. So my name is Susan Kirchhoff. I'm a she, her. I'm from the Youth Connection in Mason County. And for lack of a better way to say it, I live in a backwards, rural, demented community that doesn't even want to really acknowledge that there's a youth homeless problem. It's been a battle. We're fairly new. And as I'm listening, I'm like, oh yeah. But I can't even say that I would think my community would buy into it. So that I'm kind of curious of what, like, how would that, yeah, Shelton. Yep, that's it. And it's been an uphill battle, even for the county to recognize us and dedicate dollars. Some with the CARES grant, it's been nice because we have been able to, but anyway, so that's my question. Before I even go into all of this, like, I'd like to know, like, what's the thoughts on that, because it's so backwards.
Yeah, Susan, I think I can help with, well, like, give you some insight in like how some of the communities operate and change. I know one of the community, like current communities, when they first started, their whole goal was to shift their culture into a way that like they had people at the table who all were aligned and like, this is what the goal is. And as they kind of gathered their understanding within their improvement team, they were like, okay, so how do we start changing things and shifting things in small ways outside of this system? What ways can we scale up or shift the way we're talking about things in other spaces, or holding people accountable or asking them to be held accountable in different spaces? So to like kind of get like move this work forward, but also get everybody within the community to be on board to like understanding like some basic concepts of like, we need to address disproportionality because like these things happen in our community. And even though we don't see it, it still is something that is common and is practiced because it happens everywhere. Or yes, like we're not gonna acknowledge that youth homelessness is that big of a deal, but youth are within all of these other systems that we're also trying to address. And so we need to figure out a way to target them within these services because we know that they don't work and address their exact issues that we know exist. And so it is a lot of advocacy, which is another component of like the coaching pushes, is like, we can support you in ways of like getting and gaining support in other ways. Like we helped a community write a letter in support of Black Lives Matter because they thought it was extremely important. So we are able to coach around those pieces. If you become an anchor community initiative of what are those ways, and especially through that Find Name List phase, there'll be a lot of questions of like, who needs to be at the table? How do we get them at the table? What kind of things do they need to like hear from this group, like the improvement team, to like buy into this work? Like what kind of things do we have to give and take to make sure everyone's at the table and on the same page? Even if there is some non-negotiables, what do we need to flip and tweak and like move around in different ways to make it fit? Because I think it's like a lot of the times with this work is like what I've learned is not always like pushing the same exact thing, but being like, okay, we said it this way, but how do we say it this way? Like we need to change the word just a little bit. Like we need to like just angle it, and then maybe the square can fit in the circle if we just angle the circle, like the square, a little different way. So yeah, that's would be my response to that.
Yeah, we love strategizing. And the thing I would underscore of what Isaac said too is that like in every single community, I don't think there's a single example where the stuff that is happening on the core improvement teams is not bleeding out to the rest of the COC or like whatever the local structure is for like balance of state communities. It's bleeding out and having impacts on other populations as well in every single community. And so I think that is also one of the benefits of bringing this culture in this spot is it travels out, and we can help strategize around how to help that move that if it's like the key thing that needs to change in order to do right by young people.
Hey, Ashley. Hey, everybody. This is Deontay Cruz, the communications engagement coordinator with Away Home Washington. I go by they, them. I just received a question in the chat directly. It says, who should I contact if I have follow-up questions when completing the application? So if you have any questions at any point throughout your application, you can send those questions directly to ACI department at awayhomewa.org. And we have a team of people who will be monitoring that and get back to you in a timely fashion.
Thanks, Deontay. Are there any other questions? And I will also say before we close out too, that please send us your questions because the FAQ is going to be regularly updated. So anytime that people are sending us questions, we will try to continue to update that FAQ document so that those answers are reflected for everybody. So that is going to be a living document. And there will be another opportunity to have a webinar. We're going to try to bring some more folks from who are doing the work on the ground in the current anchor communities to give their perspectives in November, to be able to have another chance to have another conversation with you all. But are there any other questions right now that are coming up for people?
I have one. My name's Karana, I use he, they pronouns. And first off, I love this. I love the idea of like all these communities coming together, creating solidarity and creating growth. That's such a good thing. But I have a question on the burnout that's been going on, like pretty much the whole United States. It's happening in like healthcare systems and definitely at like CYS that I've noticed, people I've talked to. And I just wanted to know, like, how do you think this is going to affect the burnout that's going on all over the region?
That is a really, really great question. And there's a lot of, I think, complicated factors that kind of go into it, because there's like a lot of our service providers are losing staff or having a long time to be able to hire staff. And one of the things, one of the reasons why we have kept like iterating that like buy-in is really important is because really like we don't see this work as like extra to what communities are doing. We see this work as like what we should all be doing. Like we should all be trying to like figure out how we can change the way that we do business so that we are actually like doing things that work. Because I would rather work 60 hours a week and get results than like 60 hours a week and like continue to see the same like young people just like struggling coming through my system and not be able to do anything for them, right? And so we see it as like the work of communities, like alongside like all of these grant requirements and things that they're doing. And I think that there's like times when it really is hard to continue being so creative, especially with our current communities. Like everybody had to pivot when COVID happened and everybody was like changing everything about their programs at the same time as we started moving into the reducing phase and was like, let's get really creative about our systems. And they're like kind of creatived out a little bit in this situation. And at the same time, I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel like a real buzz of energy when I feel like we are hitting on gold. Like we have a really good idea or something that is like really inspiring to me. And I think that there's something magical about that for a lot of community members that like, a lot of this work is really hard and it takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of like, people following up with each other and like those kinds of things. And like when you're hitting on things that are successful, it's really energizing at the same time. And so that's the first thing that came to my mind, but I'm curious if other people have anything to say in the last like minute or two that we have.
Yeah, I wanted to like talk about this a little bit because I think the thing that I always go back to and like I've talked to multiple communities about is like burnout is real. All of these things are valid. Like COVID is hard. There's so many different things, shifts and turns. And there are young people who are experiencing homelessness who are also dealing with the same exact things. And like, as hard as it feels, it must be really, really hard for them as well. And if I would be remiss to not try, even if I know that like I have like this much to give, I'm gonna give a little bit of that because I still gotta survive. But like, I'm gonna give as much as I can give and hope that my cup will be filled enough so I can give that much more each and every day to this work. And like, I think that like, there's a lot of pushing that comes from the coaching team and like, there's things that we can try, there's things that we're gonna try. And when people are like creative out, and it's like folks who like are from the current communities who are like listening to this know that I've said this one, it's like, okay, cool. So like, I have this kind of cool idea from like, I think you should try this one thing. Like, if you don't have it, like maybe you should try this. And if you like, based off of the things that you have, like we've talked about this idea, let's hold on to this and just push this one. Because if we keep talking about the same things and keep talking about the same things over and over again, I'd rather be in a cycle, like moving one thing forward rather than talking about the cycle of things that we cannot do. And so usually it's about scaling down and focusing and pinpointing into one smaller thing. And a young person actually started talking about this, going from a floodlight to a laser pointer. Like, how do we just go and nail down and be like, we can just focus all of our energy here because we know we can change this thing right now.
Yeah, we call it like, how can we say yes? Like, how can we say yes to this idea? Like, maybe it's a smaller version, maybe it's like a littler thing, but how can we say yes to young people? How can we say yes to ideas? How can we say yes to like figuring out the answers to this question? And I know we're at time, and I appreciate you all taking the time to be here today. And I just want to pass it really quick to Julie to see if you have any closing comments for us as we wrap up this webinar.
I guess my closing comment is I love the questions and I love the comments. And I can tell that the folks who showed up for this call are doing what is one of my favorite things in the world, and that is dwelling in the realm of possibility versus impossibility. The whole world is constructed the other way of what's not possible. And I think one of the invigorating parts about becoming ACI is that's where we live, is how can we change this, and the recognition that we have to change our systems, that we don't have time to wait for young people to languish and be excluded from being full participants in our world and in our society. And I think that drives us all the time. We really do invite all of your questions. We put a lot of resources in the chat. We're going to have this evolving FAQ, as we said, but if you need like unique one-on-one chat about your questions, for things like we're not having a lot of political will, we're not having a lot of support in our communities, we can help you think through those things. And as Michelle put in the chat, kind of think of those sort of possibilities. We also really want you to lean into being unconventional. So what is a community? Is a community a constellation of a couple communities where it's a couple counties that are together and closely located and sharing sort of the same challenges? Those are the ways that we want you to really envision this work. And we look forward to hearing more from you and being here for you too as you explore becoming an ACI. Thank you.